welcome everyone. We are back with Sandeep Balakrishnan Dharma podcast. We shall continue the series on the history of Congress Party that we've been chronicling with Sandeep's authentic research. In the last episode, Sandeep brought us to a stage where Gandhi had managed to carve a niche out for himself in spite of the fierce nationalist leader Lokmanya Tilak being around, and his brand of fierce nationalism and pragmatic leadership was received well by all Indians, and he knew exactly when to compromise, when to strike a hard bargain with the British. And Gandhi, of course, reached a stage where he swore loyalty to the British regime and wanted a different model to continue. So we shall resume that conversation with Sandeep Balakrishna and take the journey of the Congress Party, intertwining the history of Mahatma Gandhi and other luminaries in this conversation. Hello, Sandeep. So, can you continue the journey of the Congress Party or the Chronicle of Congress Party that we've been doing episode after episode? After the last conversation ended with you, where you brought it to a stage where Gandhi had established himself, but Bal Gangadhar Tilak's brand of nationalism thankfully continued to prevail. So, can we take the conversation forward from there on?
Yeah, certainly, Parag. Thanks for setting the context, suitably. Now, to give a quick recap of the previous episode, like you mentioned, Parag, Lokmanya Balgangadhar Tilak, he had attained a triumph over the British by formulating a well thought out plan of what he called as responsive cooperation with the British, meaning that, by then the British had introduced a new kind of a constitution, a transformed government setup following the what happened in Jallianwala Bagh, post those horrific incidents. So British had essentially formed a new scheme of governance, and a lot of discussions happened within the Congress Party, which involved all stalwarts of the time, including Lokmanya Tilak and other people, Chittaranjan Das, Mohandas Gandhi, all these people. So Tilak had come out with a solution. He called it responsive cooperation with a new form of government that the British had introduced. So responsive cooperation essentially meant that the Congress Party would pretty much support the British government as long as the British fell in line. Meaning, if they did not, resort to oppressive measures like what they had done in the recent past, Congress would extend responsive cooperation. So a lot of heated exchanges happened back and forth within the Congress circle, but ultimately Tilak's voice prevailed. On a parallel track, Mohandas Gandhi, while he agreed to this responsive cooperation plan, Gandhi wrote one editorial in his journal Young India, in which he once again reaffirmed his loyalty to the British. This responsive cooperation notwithstanding, so that led R.C. Majumdar to remark that, Gandhi's allegiance to the British government was so fierce, it was so convincing that it put the most moderate of the moderate faction in the Congress to shame. So this was Mr. Gandhi. Now let's come to the next stage of the history of the Congress Party. Remember, all these events have taken place in the year 1919. So over the last 2 or 3 episodes, essentially I had remarked on the importance of this one year. It was quite momentous when we, look back at it now. So another thing also happened. A great churning happened. A great turning point of sorts also happened in the same year, 1919. This was so decisive that it would have far-reaching consequences, which culminated in the tragic partition of India. So, a decisive point that led to that was attained in the year 1919 in the form of something called the Khilafat Movement. Now, let us take a detour to understand the genesis of Khilafat movement, which predates 1919, matlab which predates it by, let's say, nearly at least 2 centuries. So we need to delve into this kind of historical detail, historical background and context to understand why the Khilafat movement became so important. Just to give a small detour, historical detour of what led to 1919, the Khilafat, so-called Khilafat movement. We have to look at Islam's encounter with the West. To put it in a large geopolitical perspective, we have to trace Islam's encounter with West. Remember the rapidity with which Islam expanded after the death of Prophet Muhammad. It's kind of astounding. In just 40 years after Prophet Muhammad died, Egypt collapsed. The whole of the Arabian region fell into the hands of this newly emergent religious imperialism. On that side, Spain was sacked. And as far as India was concerned, India was in fact the hardest nut for Islam to crack even today. If there is a single country anywhere in the world that is Islam's greatest failure since its inception, it is Sanatana Bharatavarsha. Every other pre-Islamic civilization, wherever Islam went, was wiped out at the first encounter.
Remarkable.
Yeah. So we have to put these things in this perspective. So Islam's encounter with the Christian world, especially Europe, with that world, it's quite historic. It's very prolonged. The Crusades happened. We know all that. But with the advent of Renaissance, Reformation, and the rapid advances that the post-Christian West made in science and technology, it didn't take long for the West to, pretty much shatter the Islamic political power. The stranglehold that Islam had imposed on the ancient Silk Route, essentially, preventing trade from, European trade with the East, especially India. That stranglehold was broken. So Islam has never forgotten this insult. So since Renaissance, since the scientific revolution, since that time till World War II, the West, the so-called scientific West, has pretty much crushed Islam.
So, the ability or the wherewithal to have crushed Islam, what you refer to, comes from the military prowess or the scientific prowess?
Yeah, military prowess. See, growth in military prowess, war technology, new methods of war, new types of weaponry, guns, bombs, artillery, all these things were a direct development of the direct and concomitant development of the European or the Western progress in science and technology. As simple as that. So Islam has never forgotten this. This kind of defeat at a time when they thought they were unstoppable. Suddenly, small countries like England, France, Germany, Austria, all these countries emerged, just like from nowhere. Tiny countries and emerged from nowhere. They started dictating terms in the lands considered as holy by Islam. So that we have to look at these things in this broad and large perspective. So now, but the thing about a religious imperialism like Islam and even Christianity, that is also religious imperialism, is that they never give up, because they have been ordained by their scripture that the whole earth and everybody living out here belongs to you. At any rate, you have to stamp your final authority. Darul Islam, essentially the paradise of Islam, whatever, universe of Islam,
believers and non-believers,
all these things. So, at various points in history, several pan-Islamic movements have happened, and I will restrict this discussion only to the current context. At various points in time, pan-Islamism, several pan-Islamic movements have arisen from various parts of the world, like Egypt, Syria, what today is known as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, to a lesser degree, Iran, and definitely India. So, wherever Muslims have a significant population, these pan-Islamic movements have emerged from time to time. Now, in our context, one big revival of pan-Islamism dates back to the fall of the Mughal Empire. Aurangzeb's death in 1707. So you see the date. 1707 is when Aurangzeb dies. 1919 is when the so-called Khilafat movement, emerges. So
212.
212 years. So they persist.
Yes.
They persist. Dogged. So after Aurangzeb died, Aurangzeb was responsible for he essentially cremated his own Mughal empire. That's as best as, as simply as we can, simplest way of putting it is that. So his death inaugurated what I call as the first shock and a great pause in the history of Islam's growth in India. Till then, the Mughal Empire had ruled India. If you take Babur as a starting point, from Babur till Aurangzeb, they had ruled India, large parts of India. At no point did the Mughal Empire control all of India. Let's be very clear. So, from Babur, with a brief interlude of Humayun, who didn't really manage that empire. So, from Babur to Aurangzeb, the rough timeline is about 160 or 165 years of Mughal rule over large parts of India. Now, Aurangzeb's death pretty much killed that. So that is why I call it as a first shock and pause in the history of Islam's growth in India. If you look at the Mughal annals, their own history is written by their own court chroniclers. They say, they use pretty much the same language as the colonial British did. All great boasts like the sun never sets on the British Empire. This kind of nonsense. It's replete. Even Mughal court chronicles, except that they attribute it to divine grace of Allah, and then Prophet Muhammad, and then the great conquering race of the House of Timur, which is Mughal bloodline. So this kind of glorification goes on. So when this massive empire shattered, like almost overnight, when that shattered, a big chunk of their dependents, any empire is sustained by, essentially derives its legitimacy and power from its loyalists. They fight for it, they put their necks out, in turn they are rewarded. So one big chunk of Mughal dependents, you could call them Nawabs, top-ranking bureaucrats, ministers, wazirs, Nawabs, all these guys. So they didn't know what had hit them. इतना अच्छा चल रहा था, अब क्या हो गया suddenly? Get my point, right?
Yes,
Exactly
yes.
what happened to Congress in 2014.
2014.
That 44 seats.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Rude awakening.
rude awakening. So that's how this Mughal governors and the elite reacted. So broadly speaking, you can call this class of Muslims as Ashraf, or the elite. So this elite, the most powerful among this Ashraf elite were largely concentrated in the centers of power that were closest to Delhi and Agra, which is the seat of the Mughal power. Agra mostly. Western UP, broadly speaking. Western UP. And then if you continue up, lots of parts in Pakistan, which went to Pakistan, Lahore, Karachi, all these places. Elites out there, this Ashraf, they were completely dumbfounded. They didn't know how to react. And it took them some time uh, to fashion a kind of strategy to somehow recover their lost power and glory, because in their head the Mughal Empire represented the one of the ultimate expressions of the perpetuity of Islamic political power in infidel Hindustan. So now these Ashraf elites who were lording over small empires, their provinces, they suddenly became glorified zamindars. So they had to find a way out, and something had to be done. It had to be done desperately. It had to be done urgently to restore the former supremacy of Islam in infidel Hindustan. So this is what seeded a series of Islamic revival movements throughout northern India, but its nerve centers included, nerve centers was chiefly spread across western UP. Like I said, I'll read out the names of some of these cities. Uh, for example, Saharanpur, Meerut, Aligarh, uh, and Rai Bareli, among other places. Rai Bareli, uh, befitting that one dynasty kept on winning elections after elections after elections after independence. Anyway, so guess who won from Rai Bareli in the 2024 elections?
Another Ashrafi?
Hmm.
No, sorry, that was just my way of connecting the two.
So this is one stage, one of the earliest stage, or even the first stage of Islamic revival movements in India. And the biggest name who seeded this Islamic revival in India at that time was a guy called Shah Waliullah. So he was born in 1703 and he died in 1762. Now this man's story is quite interesting. Shah Waliullah, he was a son of a guy called Shah Abdur Rahim. And this Shah Abdur Rahim was a Sufi who was an employee of Aurangzeb. Guess what his job was? He was compiling the Fatawa-e Alamgiri.
Alamgiri. Oh, he was doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
The infamous work of Aurangzeb. Okay. Now, Shah Waliullah was the son of this man. Now, let's get into the rather colorful life of Mr. Shah Waliullah. Now, Shah Waliullah has written a rather graphic book titled Fuyud al-Harmayan. I mean, I could get pronunciation wrong, but whatever. Right. So, and this he wrote this book after he returned to India from a long pilgrimage and study tour of Mecca and Medina, of that region generally. An academic named Mr. S.A.A. Rizvi. He's written a really well-researched work on some of these aspects of Sufi revival movements, and basically book on Sufis.
S.A.A. Rizvi has written this.
S.A.A. Rizvi. He has written this book. He's essentially compiled several of Shah Waliullah's writings in that book, and which includes excerpts, several portions from Shah Waliullah's Fuyud al-Harman, which I just mentioned. All right. So, one very interesting section of that book relates. Shah Waliullah himself, he narrates a dream that he saw sometime in 1732 or thereabouts. And I'll quote some excerpts from that book translated by Mr. Rizvi. Quote, in the same vision or dream, Shah Waliullah saw that the king of the Kafirs had seized Muslim towns, plundered their wealth and enslaved their children. Earlier, the king had introduced infidelity among the faithful and banished Islamic practices. Such a situation infuriated Allah and made him angry with his creatures, meaning Muslims. The Shah then witnessed the expression of his fury in the Malala. Malala means a realm where objects and events are shaped before appearing on the earth, like a vision of sorts, which in turn gave rise to the Shah's own wrath. Then the Shah found himself amongst a gathering of racial groups such as Turks, Uzbeks, and Arabs, some riding camels, others horses. So he goes on like this, and then, um yeah, the Shah's temper exasperated all these pilgrims, the Uzbeks, etc., who began to question him about the nature of his vision or the divine command, that Malala thing. So the Shah answered, from which all worldly organizations would begin to disintegrate and revert to anarchy. So this is beside the point. When asked how long such a situation would last, Shah Waliullah's reply was, until Allah's anger had subsided. Shah Waliullah and the pilgrims then travelled from town to town, slaughtering the infidels. Ultimately, they reached Ajmer, slaughtered the unbelievers there, liberated the town, and imprisoned the infidel king. Then the Shah saw the infidel king with a Muslim army led by its king, who then ordered that the infidel monarch be killed. The bloody slaughter prompted Shah Waliullah to say that divine mercy was on the side of the Muslims. So this is a dream that he's himself written and translated by Mr. Rizvi. All right, so he goes on, and it's outside the scope of this series. Maybe we can do a separate episode on Shah Waliullah and those revival movements some other day. Obviously, Shah Waliullah longed for for a pure Islamic state like that under Aurangzeb. So these are outpourings of his anger, and let me just read out one more excerpt. He's so filled with fanaticism, it is incredible. I'm not making it up, I'm reading it out from his own thing. It's incredible. So throughout his life, he began writing a series of letters to uh, small and large, powerful and not so powerful Muslim Nawabs, people who called themselves sultans, rich Muslim businessmen, zamindars, all these people. And he also carried out uh, a lengthy correspondence, rather regular correspondence with an Afghan warlord named Ahmad Shah Abdali. Remember?
Yes, yes.
Third Battle of Panipat.
Third one.
The same
So,
Ahmad Shah Abdali. So he carried on these correspondence with him. I'll just read out a sample of the kind of letter that Shah Waliullah, wrote to Ahmad Shah Abdali. He essentially invites Ahmad Shah Abdali to invade India and re-establish the might of Islam out here. Quote, the presence of the kings of Islam is a great blessing from Allah. Every Muslim king got mosques erected in his territory and created madrasas. Muslims of Arabia and Ajam means non-Arab Muslim lands. So Muslims of Arabia and Ajam migrated from their own lands and arrived in these territories. They became agents for the publicity and spread of Islam here. Up till now, their descendants are firm in the ways of Islam. Now, the country of Hindustan has passed under the power of non-Muslims. In this age, except your majesty, there is no other king who is powerful and great, who can defeat the enemies, and who is far-sighted and experienced in war. It is your majesty's bounden duty, farz-e-ain, to invade Hindustan, to destroy the power of the Marathas, and to free the down and out Muslims from the clutches of non-Muslims. Allah forbid, if the power of the infidels remains in its present position, Muslims will renounce Islam. May you acquire plunder beyond measure, and may the Muslims be freed from the stranglehold of the infidels. Close.
terrible. Two thoughts,
Yeah.
if I may. One is these dreams slash visions sound more like manufactured prescriptions to incite violence and reclaim an establishment.
No. To a rational mind trained in the way that we are trained, the way we have received formal education, it might appear like what you described. It isn't. They were literalists. If a Waliullah said that he saw a dream like that. He wasn't manufacturing it. It was, he genuinely believed from the depth of his heart and soul that he was a literalist.
Okay.
He believed it was true.
So it manifested itself.
Yes. Okay, the brainwashing is at a totally different level. So, anyway.
And the second part is this invitation to an Afghan warlord.
Yeah.
And the chilling parallels that we're seeing in the last few years.
Absolutely. So this is pretty much Shah Waliullah. He initiated this pattern of Islamic revival movements that eventually followed later. So Shah Waliullah's son, Abdul Aziz, one of his sons, so he carried on his father's work, and now this fellow Abdul Aziz, unlike Shah Waliullah, who saw the Marathas and the Jats as the prime enemies of Islamic, political loss in India, his son Abdul Aziz, he saw the ascendant British, East India Company essentially, the ascendant British power as the kafir number one who had to be, enemy number one who had to be defeated and driven out of India. So he continued his father's work. Now the third big stage arrives with a disciple of, very devoted disciple of the same Abdul Aziz. The name of this disciple is Syed Ahmad Barelvi. So Barelvi meaning, because Syed Ahmad is his name, Barelvi because he was born in, surprise, Raebareli. Alright. Now, arguably, Syed Ahmad Barelvi, he holds the credit for properly seeding the revival of what he called pure Islam, as expounded both by various Islamic scholars and as expounded in theory and practice by Aurangzeb. And guess what, Paran? How Wikipedia describes Syed Ahmad Barelvi as?
Philanthropist.
No, very not. I'm tempted to agree, but no. So the Wikipedia article on Syed Ahmad Barelvi, it completely sanitizes him and presents him as merely an Indian Muslim revivalist. Scroll.in, some people call it troll.in. So scroll.in calls him an Islamic icon, which is true actually in many senses. Now, this man, Barelvi, Syed Ahmad Barelvi, was born in 1786, like I said, in Raebareli, and in the same year, that is 1786, let's look at a picture in far away down in South India. In that year, Tipu Sultan, the tyrant of Mysore, was busy launching serial jihads, committing extreme barbarism in Andhra, in northern Karnataka. He and his men were busy hanging, kafirs in public, butchering infants and lactating mothers. So this is what Tipu was doing in the year of Syed Ahmad Barelvi's birth. So after getting trained initially as a student under Abdul Aziz, Shah Waliullah's son, Syed Ahmad Barelvi was he was sent by the same Abdul Aziz to Mecca, all expenses paid trip, sent to Mecca. Why? In Abdul Aziz's own words, he was sent to Mecca to fully and properly equip himself with religious zeal. Close quote. And in Mecca and in those areas, Syed Ahmad Barelvi met highly pious fanatics who were fabled for their mastery over Islamic theology, and there he learned the theory, art and tactics of reviving and spreading pure Islam in Hindustan. So long story short, he returned to India at the end of the year 1822, and then he declared that God had given him a mission. He had entrusted him a mission on earth. This mission was to get rid of all the non-Islamic dirt that had accumulated in the Muslim community in Hindustan. This non-Islamic dirt, according to Syed Ahmad Barelvi, included the following: the heterodox Sufis, meaning there were a band of Sufis who dressed like Hindu yogis. They sported long hair. They did not shave their mustaches like Islamic scholars and regular, Islamic clergy. They didn't adopt any of those manners. They adopted the manners of Hindu yogis and Bairagis, that class of people. Second were the Shias. So Shias were considered as non-Islamic. They were considered as heterodox by Syed Ahmad Barelvi. Naturally, he was a Sunni. And the third element of non-Islamic dirt accumulated within the Muslim community in India were the practices borrowed from Hindus. Even today, there are some groups within the Muslim community which follow Hindu rituals. They have Mangal Sutra. They tie Mangal Sutra during their weddings and other different kinds of Hindu practices. They follow. They do arti and all that. I've seen some of these things with my own eyes. All right, but Syed Ahmad Barelvi faced two great barriers before he could spread and attain his purifying mission in India. The first big barrier was the hated British, and the second big barrier was, in his own words, the cunning and the wily Sikhs, the Sikhs. So, to overcome these two great barriers, Syed Ahmad Barelvi put forward a great solution. This solution was to launch a wholesale jihad against both the British and the Sikhs simultaneously. However, eventually he realized that it was easier said than done, because by that time, by 1822, 1826, whatever that period, second decade of the 19th century, British dominance, in various parts of India was, near total. The only big barrier to this kind of British dominance was the great Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So Syed Ahmad Barelvi realized that this was not going to be an easy part. He hated Maharaja Ranjit Singh and the Sikhs for a very fundamental reason. I'll come to that in a bit. So when Syed Ahmad Barelvi realized exactly how formidable these two powers were, he adopted a multi-pronged strategy. First, he appealed directly to the Muslim ulema or the Muslim clergy, which has a near total hold over the Muslim community. Then he appealed to the Muslim youth by conducting a door-to-door campaign, spreading the message of his, this purity of Islam, should be restored to India. This message he took it to door and especially captured the Muslim youth. Next, he sought, he appealed, and he received substantial donations from Muslim businessmen, zamindars, landlords, rich people across an impressive geography throughout India. I'll read out the cities which liberally businessmen and rich Muslims contributed to this man's fundraising campaign. Patna, Bihar, Hyderabad, Madras, Chennai, Bengal, large parts of Uttar Pradesh, not to mention Bombay, and a cousin of the Nizam of Hyderabad generously supplied money. These things are not told. So, let me read out a small sample of a letter that this Syed Ahmad Barelvi wrote to a Muslim businessman. This is a templatesque kind of appeal. Quote, my real object is the establishment of jihad against the Sikhs of the Punjab and not to stay in the countries of Afghanistan and Yagistan. The long-haired infidels who have seized sovereignty over Punjab are very experienced, clever and deceitful. The ill-natured Sikhs and the ill-fated polytheists have gained control over the western parts of India from the banks of the Indus to the capital city of Delhi. Close quote. So, in his inimitable style, the great rishi of one of the great rishis of our time, the late great Sri Sitaram Goel, this is how he characterizes Syed Ahmad Barelvi. Very pithy. Quote, such a combination of scoundrelism and self-righteousness is rare even among hardened Muslim theologians and missionaries.
Scoundrelism and self-righteousness.
Self-righteousness.
I think I can think of 2-3 characters currently in the Indian political scheme. Yeah.
Just 2-3.
Yeah, in the top of the mind because of what's happening in West Bengal.
West Bengal, true. Alright, so let's cut to the year 1824 and 1825. By that time, Syed Ahmad Barelvi had amassed a huge fortune. Money was just flowing in. And he used a lot of that money to recruit thousands of mujahideens for his cause. These mujahideens obviously came from all over India, undivided India. And they were, thoroughly brainwashed and kept constantly in a state of battle readiness. All right. And to reinforce their commitment and their psychological and religious preparedness, Syed Ahmad Barelvi made them sing war songs mandatorily, and these war songs or war poems were infused with blood-curdling messages rooted in Islamic theology. Here is one such poem. It is titled Risala Jihad. Quote, war against the infidel is incumbent on all Muslims. Make provisions for all things. He who from his heart gives 1 farthing to the cause shall hereafter receive 700-fold from God. He who shall equip a warrior in this cause of God shall hereafter obtain a martyr's reward. His children dread not the trouble of the grave, nor the last trump, not the day of the judgment. Cease to be followers of the crowds. Join the divine leader and smite the infidel. I give thanks to God that a great leader has been born in the 13th of the Hijrah. Hijrah is a Islamic calendar year. So, close quote. So this is how they were being trained. And in 1826, Syed Ahmad Barelvi, he landed with his mujahideens in the Peshawar Valley, and there he declared an outright jihad first against Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And now I'll tell you the reason for his deep and abiding hatred for the Sikhs in his own words, in Syed Ahmad Barelvi's own words, quote, these long-haired vile infidels do not allow the call to prayer from mosques, and they prohibit the killing of cows.
Where have those Sikhs gone in Punjab now?
Close quote. Okay. Now you see the kind of the valor, the greatness, and the glory of the Sikh Empire. For the first time after 600 years, it was Maharaja Ranjit Singh who completely crushed Muslim power in Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, which had slipped out of Sanatana hold for 600 years. This man restored it in the middle of the 19th century.
Naman.
Really. I mean, we cannot repay his debt.
Your line keeps coming back. Where have those men gone?
Where have those men gone? All right. So, like I said, in 1826, Syed Ahmad Barelvi declared an outright jihad against Maharaja Ranjit Singh himself, and it was a profoundly stupid move. Now, Ranjit Singh was a true emperor, and he was silently observing what this fellow was doing all the while for a long time. And now he decided that the time had come to punish this man for good. So Ranjit Singh sent out a contingent of his formidable Sikh army, which pursued this bigot, Syed Ahmad Barelvi, from place to place. This man had to flee. a great guy who thought he could declare jihad against Maharaja Ranjit Singh. He was hounded and hunted down, and his force, massive force of Mujahideens, it had dwindled down. They saw that, acha, this guy is only full of bluster, not much in terms of action.
Valor.
So by the year 1831, Syed Ahmad Barelvi found himself completely isolated. He landed in a place called, a small town called Balakot.
Ah.
And there he was cornered, so he had no other option. For all his bluster, he had to fight back. He couldn't surrender and look weak. So he decided to fight back, and it was a thoroughly uneven contest, but it was a contest that Syed Ahmad Barelvi had himself invited. And it might surprise you when I say this, that it was also the first and the last battle that Syed Ahmad Barelvi ever fought in his life. And on the other side, the battle was led by the indomitable, valorous general of Maharaja Ranjit Singh named Umar Sher Singh. The Sikh army stormed Syed Ahmad Barelvi's hideout and crushed his fierce Mujahideens like worms. The whole thing was over in less than 2 hours. And Syed Ahmad Barelvi and his second in command, they were caught, fitted, beheaded, and their body was burned, and the ashes were scattered to the winds.
This is how one crushes an enemy.
Remember what the US
did
with the body of
Osama
bin Laden?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is how you do it.
Yes.
And in the Muslim annals, history's chronicles, predictably, Syed Ahmad Barelvi is still revered as a Shaheed or martyr. They've built a dargah for him somewhere. I forget in which.
I'm not sure how Maharaja Ranjit Singh and Kuwar Sher Singh are revered in Punjab today, unfortunately.
No. Maharaja Ranjit Singh still commands a great reverence in Punjab, even now.
Yeah, but the state seems to have strayed.
Yeah, it is strayed, unfortunately. Most of the misfortunes that have hit the Hindu community have hit after 1947.
Oh, okay. Nicely said.
As simple as that. But Syed Ahmad Barelvi died, but what he had left behind in Peshawar and adjoining areas, including some parts in Pakistan, that proved more enduring. I'll come to that in a bit. The next stage in the Islamic revival movement after Barelvi's death, I mean, these are not, stages are not cast in stone. A happened first and B happened next. A lot of these things were happening simultaneously. People like Shah Waliullah, Syed Ahmad Barelvi, they are some of the most notable Islamic revivalists. So, one of Barelvi's disciples, his name was Mir Nazar Ali. He focused his attentions in a place called Barasat in Bengal. Okay. So, this Mir Nazar Ali was also known as Titu Mir or Titu Mia, and he carried his master's, purification, campaigns throughout West Bengal. But then the British saw that he was a troublemaker and shot him dead mercilessly. Mercilessly. And this Titu Mian's followers were also hanged. Then another guy called Shariatullah, he started something called the Faraizi movement in East Bengal, now Bangladesh. So this guy was also hardcore bigot. He had also received the training in Mecca and Medina, and he didn't make much of a headway. Now, his was a super ultra bigot named Muhammad Mohsin, who was nicknamed as Dudu Mia. He carried on, this
agenda.
Yeah, this same agenda, but again, he was obviously these guys are all troublemakers. So the British caught him and pretty much and killed him. So imprisoned him and pretty much died in jail. So these things kept on happening simultaneously. All right. Now, in the next big stage of the history of Islamic history of India, post Aurangzeb, is a guy called Bahadur Shah Zafar, the so-called last Mughal ruler. A lot of historians, even well-meaning historians, they look at him as some kind of a tragic hero. He was anything but a tragic hero.
A lot of romanticization.
A lot of romanticization because they are lured by his tasteful poetry and his love for this finer things and so-called finer things in life. Basically, he was a decadent guy. All right. So, I mean, it is well known that Bahadur Shah Zafar's authority did not extend beyond the walls of the Red Fort. Guess his entire family, the total number of his entire family, staff, servants, everybody living within the Red Fort. 2,000 people. 2,000 people, all of them, that whole thing. Essentially, Bahadur Shah Zafar, his life, his lifestyle, his authority, his whatever, was maintained by the pensions given to him by the East India Company.
Oh,
yeah. This was the last great Mughal king of India. He's also celebrated as a leader of the first war of Indian independence, 1857. So that is why his name becomes important because of that, because of 1857. Okay, let's look at some of his characteristic features, some of the main features. There's a very famous couplet that he has written. My Urdu is not so good, but let's see, how it goes. गाजियों में बू रहेगी जब तक ईमान की तख्त लंदन तक चलेगी तेग हिंदुस्तान की. Meaning, as long as there remains the scent of Iman in the hearts of our Ghazis, so long shall the sword of Hindustan flash before the throne of London. Very heroic, no?
Yeah.
Except that it wasn't. It was just a couplet. Okay? Now, it is like a hijra writing erotic poetry and, going on his first night. So this is a level of delusion. So, Bahadur Shah Zafar was endowed with cosmic levels of delusions to compose a couplet like this, after being comprehensively crushed and reduced to the status of a pensioner by the East India Company. It takes some gall to do this.
Cosmic levels of delusion.
Yeah. But he was a granddaddy of all delusions, who led even the fragments of the Mughal Empire to extinction. Okay. He led it through extinction through a potent mix of servility, vice, verse, wine, and wantonness. Okay. Now, notable among the Himalayan delusions that Bahadur Shah harbored is a bizarre self-belief that he had. And this bizarre self-belief is criticized by none other than Syed Ahmad Khan. Okay, this is what he says about Zafar. Quote, Bahadur Shah Zafar had a fixed idea that he could transform himself into a fly or a gnat, and that he could, in this disguise, travel himself to other countries and learn what was going on there. Seriously, he firmly believed that he possessed this power of transformation. This is what a guy like Syed Ahmad Khan writes about.
This is the cosmic level of delusion.
Delusion. Okay. And there is a very interesting compilation, essentially a series of diaries maintained by a British colonial resident stationed inside Bahadur Shah Zafar's Red Fort. So he maintained a regular diary, noting the daily observations of the life that he saw around inside the Red Fort. Okay. The British had put him there to keep a watch on that. So it was compiled into a document, into a book titled Treachery of Palace Intelligence. And this resident was inside Zafar's Red Fort from the years 1851 to 54. 4 years. Okay. Now, I'll just so hilarious. So I'll just summarize the observations, all right, of this Treachery of Palace Intelligence. So one of the conclusions of this British resident was that Bahadur Shah Zafar was still basking in the illusion that his Mughal house, the house of the Mughals, still commanded the same prestige as it had done before during the time of even Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. And Zafar fed the delusion with the same British pension, spending it extravagantly, buying up jewelry, beautifying gardens, spending on all kinds of festivities, parties, and extravagant decadence. And when obviously the money, you spend like this, all the fortune of the world won't be enough for you. So each time the money would run out ahead of the next deposit of the British pension, so he borrowed copiously from private moneylenders.
To maintain that false opulence.
To maintain that false opulence. So his self-created chimera of Mughal prestige, it was so incredibly pathetic that he once refused entry to the Nawab of Bawalpur unless he took off his pagdi. So that guy was a real Nawab. Okay, this guy was just a owner of a house, as simple as that. Except that the house was a fort, it was a red fort. So he said, you might be a Nawab, but I'm still a Mughal Badshah. So take off your pagdi. So this was a kind of his behavior. He was a true believer of delusions. And
For a minute, you took a long pause between believer and delusions.
so, and that man, the Nawab laughed at him, and he said, "Look, you have no power. You no longer command authority to say something to me like this." And he just laughed his way out of the whole thing. And this grand red fort of Bahadur Shah Zafar was also the grand structural symbolism and reality of this physical reality of this delusion of grandeur. So this Prissy of Palace intelligence, uh, it offers extraordinary, first-hand details about the personal life of Bahadur Shah Zafar, his huge harem, his retinue of begums, his princes, meaning his sons, and the social and cultural life within the Red Fort, like I said, which housed 2,000 people. And he kept on running out of British pensions ahead of the next deposit, like I said. So the picture, I'll give you a summary of the picture that I've gathered from that document. We are treated to an orgy of ruin on epic scale. On the political front, we witness a doddering old nominal sultan who is in the amorous grip of his powerful begum. So this woman, she's extremely wild, and she borrowed on an even more lavish scale from private Hindu moneylenders.
Oh, private Hindu
Yeah,
money.
yeah. Okay. And we also see his utter political, enervation in the manner in which that that wazir from Lucknow fools him. We also see the Nawab of Awadh, who flouts this token, Mughal Sultan's authority with impunity. He has no control over anybody. We also see how Bahadur Shah Zafar has become a willing pawn in the hands of his courtiers, and he is also a pawn, a puppet in the hands of a physician who wields real power. We also see how Zafar has completely devoted his life to the pursuit of pleasure and poetry via minute details of his daily routine. We see him wasting fabulous sums on weddings. We see his princess and other members of the royal family rivaling each other in maintaining concubines and slave girls. We notice how bootlegging, illicit liquor, had transformed into a thriving industry because this great man with no economy, he had banned wine drinking.
Sorry?
He had banned wine drinking, manufacture of wine,
Okay.
liquor. So we also see how the Red Fort economy was subsidized by British pension, which artificially kept the prices low. But like I said, Zafar's Begums somehow managed to kept on notching up enormous amounts of, debt. And there, finally, we see all the signs and symbols of an ensuing cataclysm. It is a small wonder that when this cataclysm actually ensued, Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last great Mughal, also turned out to be the last great traitor of the first war of Indian independence that occurred in 1857. Okay, I'll just read out the precise details of his treachery. Okay, now at that time, when what the British call as the Sepoy mutiny, right, when that broke out, people, especially in North India, North and Northwestern India, people were looking for leadership. So there was this token sultan, and they said, "Come, we need your leadership. At least go out on the field and lead us. We'll do the rest. We'll do the actual fighting. But you're supposed to be the sultan, so lead us.
Lead from the front.
Lead from the front." So what happened was that this man had an aversion to everything that was heroic and valorous. So he
Sorry,
refused.
but your choice.
He refused, and things reached such a stage that uh, the soldiers, matlab, what the British call as mutineers, so Indians, freedom fighters, they stormed right into the Red Fort, stormed into his palace, caught him by his beard, and began to hurl all kinds of obscenities against him, calling him "Abe Budhe, Ajao, lead the fight from the front." Okay. Still, this man was so cowardly and shameless that he refused.
So,
These are things no textbooks will tell you.
So, the romanticization that we referred to a little while earlier, wasn't this fueled by that series that Nasiruddin Shah acted as Bahadur Shah Zafar, Gulzar, and all of that? I just
No, that no. Okay, so
no, what you're saying, the facts have never been brought out in that sense. So that's why I was wondering where the
no, they won't know the whole point about Bahadur Shah Zafar. Sanitizing his this kind of cowardly record is part of secular agenda.
Okay.
And one of the great promoters, one of the vilest promoters, is still alive, William Dalrymple, the last Mughal or something. He wrote this book. So once all the sepoys, they had pretty much taken over the Red Fort, and they had cornered the Bahadur Shah Zafar. Physical pressure also they put on him. So he finally conceded. It's not easy to face, be surrounded by 1,000, thousands of people, at least 1,000 people, and still not, and still say that you have courage and you will not give in to them. So finally, Bahadur Shah Zafar, he had to concede to lead the first war of Indian independence, owing to this kind of pressure. So that is how this title of Emperor of Hindustan was artificially bestowed on him by the sepoys. All right. So these reasons no books will tell you. Now, R.C. Majumdar, he describes this whole build-up beautifully, and his analysis is quite, I think it's a final word on this subject. Quote, the sepoys were not perhaps solely to blame for the sorry state of things. The character and personality of Bahadur Shah Zafar were also partly responsible for it. He was advanced in age and almost a dotard, a plaything in the hands of his favorite Begum, Zeenat Mahal. He had no administrative experience nor knowledge of men and things. He spent his time composing verses in Urdu and took delight in such peaceful activities. He lacked military knowledge and personal bravery. Like I said, he had an aversion to all things heroic and valorous. Okay. But this doesn't stop here. Whereas the sepoys demanded a steely leadership, Bahadur Shah Zafar, he took the forced appointment. So they looked at some solid leadership. In turn, Zafar gave them the following pious advice. He said, "Ye sab moh maya hai. Leave this worldly life. It is cruel. It is wicked. It corrupts you. Leave this worldly life and adopt the life of the pious fakirs." So one British historian, I'll quote him, he says that Bahadur Shah assumed the responsibility of the position which had been forced upon him. It is more probable that the old man, left to himself, would have shrunk from the position. So, even as Bahadur Shah maintained this facade of leading the fight against the British, he opened a secret parallel track with the same British. This is where the treachery story comes in. Okay. So, on the side, he offered full support to the British so that they could crush the sepoys, the freedom fighters. This is what R.C. Majumdar says. Not only had Bahadur Shah had no confidence in the sepoys or sympathy for their cause, but even after he had joined with the sepoys, he maintained his loyalty to the British. They were giving him pensions. Remember?
They're funding his
existence.
Very existence.
So, as part of the secret deal, Bahadur Shah Zafar sent out several letters to various British military officers, for example, to the Lieutenant Governor of Agra. In all these letters, he betrayed the location and other details of the sepoys in various places. And that powerful physician, remember?
Yeah.
He had the real control of the administration. His name is Hassanullah Khan. He also wrote similarly treacherous letters to the British. Okay? And once the 1857 war was crushed, and the British conducted the trial, and even Bahadur Shah Zafar's own testimony, they have enough and more corroborations of his own betrayal of his own people, his own countrymen, his own subjects, the sepoys. Okay, but one of his most macabre acts of this treachery occurred 1 month after the War of Independence officially broke out. So even as the sepoys were engaged in intense fighting with the British in and around Delhi, Meerut, all those places, it was a fight that they fought in Bahadur Shah Zafar's name. And this guy was busy betraying them, writing secret, treacherous correspondence.
Gain their back. Yeah.
So around that time, Zafar sent a secret message to a guy called General T. Reed. and another letter to another commander who headed the British unit, which had pretty much besieged Delhi. And in turn, T. Reed conveyed the following message to another military guy named John Lawrence, who was a chief commander of Punjab. So this letter reads as follows: one of our Gomasta meaning clerk, one of our Gomastas who was in Delhi brought a message from the king that if we would guarantee his life and pension, he would open the gates for us.
Life and pension.
ये है आपका monarch, emperor of India. Okay, and the name of this Gomasta was Fateh Muhammad, who made the following statement in the trial. Quote, the king was most desirous of making peaceful terms with the British, and if a formal promise was given to him that his pension of 1 lakh rupees a month and his former position should be secured to him, he would have the Darwaza basically, opened for the admission of British troops. So this Zardaroza was a private entrance into the palace, on the riverside, Yamuna riverside. The king also offered to arrange to have any other of the city gates open to the British at any time that they might wish,
as long as the price was paid.
As long as the price was paid. So when these correspondences were occurring, another parallel track happened. So this time, Bahadur Shah Zafar, he unleashed his favorite Begum. Remember, Zeenat Mahal. He unleashed her. So on August 19, 1857, the commissioner of Meerut, H. Greathead, he recorded in his diary, quote, I am beginning to get letters from the Begum and the princess declaring that they have been fondly attached to us and that they only want to know what favor they can do for us. Another entry in his diary dated August 23rd reads as follows. An emissary came out from Zeenat Mahal, the favorite wife of the king, offering to exercise her influence with the king to bring about some arrangement. I can keep on reading. I've written a long form on this one. So the conclusion is the same. And I'll quote R.C. Majumdar. He says, Bahadur Shah and his family betrayed the cause not only of the Sepoys, but also of the whole country. And as cynical as it might sound, the terms of Bahadur Shah Zafar's betrayal were rather cheap, even by the standards of that period. All right. So, but the British had enough of this guy, and they didn't want to spend more money. By their very nature, somebody very memorably described the British as a race of shopkeepers. So, very miserly kind of a people, especially East India Company, which would spare no opportunity to plunder and not give.
So for them to spend,
continue to spend this kind of thing on such a useless fellow. On this useless fellow, they had enough of Bahadur Shah Zafar, so they ruthlessly crushed the first war of Indian independence. And even before Bahadur Shah could carry out his betrayal and surrender to them, so they said, "Bahut ho gaya budhe. All your mischief is enough.
Your party ends.
Your party ends here." So they took him, they flung him into an obscure jail in Burma, where he spent his last days wallowing in misery and squalor. Died forgotten. But there is a sickening postscript to this great traitor named Bahadur Shah Zafar. It happened in recent history. Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in 2012 visited Bahadur Shah Zafar's grave at Yangon and went on his knees and offered a fatiha or a prayer to this traitor. This is what India needs to recover from.
Yes.
That closes the story of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Meaning, one more, how can I say, whatever even remained of the royal political power, even in name, was completely crushed, with his imprisonment and death. Now we cut to the next stage in the revival of, Islamic movements in India. So this is something called the Wahhabi movement, and I just quickly summarize that. So this Wahhabi movement was an offshoot. It occurred in the mid and the late, around the time of the first war of Indian independence. So this occurred in the areas in which that Syed Ahmad Barelvi, Peshawar surrounding. Remember I mentioned that. So there, one of his descendants of his disciples, out there, his Mujahideens, local tribe, local Muslim tribes, all these people, they took inspiration from Syed Ahmad Barelvi. They started something called a Wahhabi movement, plundering British outposts, killing British soldiers, destroying whatever Hindu temples were there, looting Hindu properties, shops, killing the kafirs, the usual stuff that we are all familiar. But this Wahhabi movement, I brought this up, for a simple reason. This Wahhabi movement is still painted in our textbooks as part of the first war of Indian independence. It was anything but that. It was a fight to recover the lost Muslim political power in those regions, Afghanistan, Herat Valley, all those places. So that is the next, what you call interlude, a small footnote in the chapter of the Islamic revival movements that began with Shah Waliullah. And now we come to the last stage of this story. The name of this last stage is something known as Sir Syed Ahmad Khan.
Sir Syed Ahmad Khan.
Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir was a title that the British had bestowed on an extremely shrewd bigot known as Syed Ahmad Khan. Most of us have heard his name is familiar to all of us, so I'm skipping some of the details. So Syed Ahmad Khan also hailed from a lineage of Ashrafs who had served in various high capacities in the Mughal court at various points of time. Now, by the time of Syed Ahmad Khan's arrival, like I said, Muslim power had been crushed. All these revival movements were happening in parallel. But Syed Ahmad Khan, he thought of a different strategy. Syed Ahmad Khan, in a sense, represents a complete shift in the strategy, a new chapter, a new era in the revival efforts to revive Muslim power in India. So until 1857, all the revivalist movements I've mentioned have had extremely violent sides to it. Bloodshed, killing, looting, plundering, this kind of thing. Battle, hard battle on the battlefield. But the savage manner in which the British had crushed 1857 freedom struggle, that instilled deep and lasting terror in the hearts of this Ashraf community. For the first time, they didn't know how to deal with this. They thought Muslims, the British would be forgiving like Hindu kings who had defeated Muslims at various points. But this was a totally different beast. So, as a result of that terror, they began to re-strategize, and they decided that re-strategizing effort was led by Syed Ahmad Khan. So, that re-strategizing involved everlasting, unconditional, and craven supplication before the British. Hum tumhara gulam hai.
So it's such.
You have
The position was that straight away.
You have unconditional support. Okay? And this same Syed Ahmad Khan, of course, is celebrated. He is called the father of the two-nation theory. He is the original progenitor of the two-nation
deliberately attributed to Savarkar by the secular agenda.
He is the progenitor of Pakistan. He is the granddaddy of the so-called two-nation theory. He was the ultra Ashraf. He belonged to the ultra Ashraf royalty in a sense. And this Syed Ahmad Khan, it is justifiable for Pakistan to celebrate him. On what grounds did the government of independent India, or the Bharatavarsha that still remains, on what grounds did the government of independent India release a postage stamp in his honor? Till date, this Syed Ahmad Khan is still the perennial object of the nightly erotic dreams of our secularists. You should see the kind of NCERT books all these eminent historians have written about him. Syed Ahmad Khan was opportunistic to the last drop, and he quickly morphed himself into a political huckster by crawling before the East India Company. Remember, India had not yet passed before into the British crown. So he prostrated before the East India Company, and he also never forgot what the Mughal power truly represented. Meaning, he never forgot why he was doing this, why he had surrendered before the British. It was a revival of the grandeur of Mughal Empire. And like most people correctly say, Pakistan is the unfinished Mughal dream. So this man seeded a completely different method and strategy to realize this, to fulfill this
So basically hoodwinking the British.
Yeah, okay. And Syed Ahmad Khan was also the original progenitor of nearly half a century long Muslim collaboration with the British against the numerically and politically superior Hindus and even against the fledgling Indian National Congress. All right. In return, Syed Ahmad Khan received various benefits from the British, and uh, he was given that ultimate award to a willing slave who helps the oppressive master, which is a knighthood. Sir, that's how he became sir. But over and above all, Syed Ahmad Khan's subservience to the British, it gave him what he really wanted, which was an open field to propagate the two nation theory in an unrestrained fashion. Okay? The bigot inside Syed Ahmad Khan now, slowly began to blossom. And here is a small excerpt, sample, a tiny sample from his own words on the dark art of effectively concealing bigotry. He says, do not show the face of Islam to others. Instead, show your face as a follower of true Islam, representing character, knowledge, tolerance, and piety. This is subterfuge at so many levels.
This is what is labeled as al-taqiyya, right?
Correct. So this kind of approach naturally proved, gave him good dividends. His Aligarh movement, the infamous Aligarh movement, it quickly, gathered steam, and over time it became a vast and extremely powerful hub for providing intellectual and academic varnish for the gradual and the methodical revival of Islamic political power in India. Okay. Syed Ahmad Khan also tangentially gave birth. He inspired two prominent leaders who followed his mold. The first was Allama Iqbal. The second was a man named Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Comes a full circle.
Okay, and all this subterfuge kept on working until the Ashraf community, after Syed Ahmad Khan's death, they thought that okay, we have now become powerful thanks to Aligarh movement and all these things. We have now become so powerful that we can dictate terms to the British. But what they forgot was the fact that the British crown, by then England, the British crown was a world power in the true sense. It was ruling India, and not East India Company was ruling India. So the moment this Ashraf community tried to play mischief against the British crown, it instantly hit back. In 1911, the British government undid the partition of Bengal. It was not because of good nature or some kind of a heroic fight put up by the Muslim community. No, it wanted to show the Muslim community its place. Yes, we caved in, we acceded to your demand to partition Bengal along Hindu-Muslim lines in 1905, but we are the same people who still have the power to undo it.
So we are calling the shots, don't we?
This is your place.
This is your place.
So behave yourself. And in 1919, England smashed the Turkish Caliphate forever. All right, and that was pretty much the end of the road for this Ashraf elite as far as any collaboration with the British was concerned. A collaboration usually happens on equal terms. It happens between equals. Any other collaboration, there is a master-slave relationship, as simple as that. So that was the end of this Muslim elite's collaboration with the colonial British government. But then, it did not take this Ashraf long enough to find another victim to carry on this self-same subterfuge. And especially after the Allied powers smashed the Turkish Caliphate, back home in India, this Ashraf elite slowly began looking for help towards the Indian National Congress, and it needed another powerful him to carry on this subterfuge, like I said. And in fact, in this case, they didn't even have to actually go looking for this victim. That victim had been frantically, publicly waving its hands, beckoning them for quite some time. The name of this victim was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
The last 1 hour with Sandeep Balakrishna was a fascinating masterclass in history, spanning from 1919 backward to 1703, where he started with Shah Waliullah to bringing about the debauchery and cowardice of Bahadur Shah Zafar, subsequently Syed Ahmad Khan. He also touched upon the episode where the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh actually paid tributes to his grave in Burma, and eventually brought it back full circle to the year 1990, where among his disciples was Muhammad Ali Jinnah, before that Syed Ahmad Khan, who was the original proponent of the two nation theory. So, if any one of you wondered, I was, as he was narrating, on why this detour, it brought such beautiful, rich context to back to the year 1919, and how that was important for the Khilafat movement to be discussed in the subsequent episode. So, immense thanks to Sandeep for bringing fascinating nuggets, authentic nuggets into the public domain. So, with that, I hope these sessions that we do with Sandeep on Dharma podcast have been proven to be as rich in history as they promise to be. So please continue to like, share, subscribe, and give us your super thanks so that the knowledge that is brought out in these episodes on Dharma podcast reaches a wider audience. Thanks, everyone.